like Russians, pseudo-Russians, and Argentinians with a Japanese team getting into the UK elite academic circles. And those were some crazy meetings in the beginning. And we're like, we're going to do it in Haskell. And like, what the hell is this? And oh man. And then we try to make it work in Japan. And we were looking for functional programmers there. And they're like, who the hell are you guys? what are we doing? Is it drugs? We're like, no, it's crypto. It's like, it's got to be drugs.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. The future is tokenized. We have an amazing stream for you today. We have Dan from ZenGate, and we have Charles Hoskinson, the CEO of IOG, and I'm also Big Pay. How are you guys doing today?
Good to be here, Big Pay.
Yeah, doing great. Doing great. Great to see such big stars to the left and right of me.
I'm excited to be here. I was told about this last week, and how could I say no? And honestly, we'll jump right into it. You know, during the initial stages of starting IOG and Cardano, could you share a specific example that encapsulates a significant challenge you faced? And how did you and your team manage to overcome this challenge? And what key insights did you gain from that experience?
Well, Dan was there almost at the very beginning. We went through a lot of trials and tribulations. I mean, the biggest issue was that cryptocurrencies were not well understood in Japan. And that was kind of the founding nexus of the Cardano project. And while we had the best of intentions, we kind of got lumped in and rolled in with a lot of stuff that wasn't the best of things. Because back then there was one coin and all these other things. And there was kind of a negative view in mainstream Japanese society about tokens. And they're like, well, what is this? And why does this exist? Why should we care? So we were never having a conversation from zero to something. It was always from -20. And you had to earn your way to zero and it kind of get there. It almost reminded me of like The Simpsons, where they had the franchise-a-thon and they had the guy with the picture straightening, like the frame straightening, and it's like, here's our franchise manual includes like, who are you and why are you here? These types of things. So we had to get through it, which was fun, and it took about a year to kind of get that flywheel going and get people acknowledging it. And then we had the opposite problem where people kind of overdid it, and they created sometimes unrealistic expectations about things. And part of it was dialing things back and normalizing it. So it was either too little or too much, and kind of getting that Goldilocks zone was quite challenging. I don't know, Dan, what would you say, from going back to our 2015 and 2016 days?
Yeah. No, I think that's right on point. I remember a lot of noise. It wasn't the very, very, very beginning. It wasn't like the Bitcoin is fresh and new era. It was, there was a lot of noise. There was a lot of, there were a lot of scams as well. I mean, a lot of this was warranted because we basically launched during this whole, ICO phase, right? Especially in Japan, when the rules changed, there were a lot of ICOs, and you think Japan is like a society of honor, and everybody's so honest, and there were a lot of scams out here. And and the Japanese got really just cautious right away. So we had to deal with that. We had to deal with noise around it where we actually weren't known at all, right? There wasn't really any serious media about us. Charles was the only one that people actually knew. And so I literally had to do this back in the early days. I had to go through the internet, go and search and see if there's any news that would come out about us. And if it ever did, 9 out of 10 times it was kind of like, well, I read this stuff on Twitter about them, and I don't know about these guys, but it's not my opinion, but it's the opinion of all these Twitter people. And so you have to really kind of fight against that to make sure that, the message is clear and the narrative is clear, because you don't want people to just take it and run with it and you have no answer to it.
Oh my Lord. They were the master of the Trump before anybody else. Is like, hey, I've been hearing over the internet some things. I don't know if they're true, but if they say it, where there's smoke, there's fire. And then just
Yeah, yeah,
imagine that in Japanese on
yeah.
Twitter. And oh God, that was like, what was the name of that diner we used to go to in Osaka? It's
Oh,
kind of like
Royal Host.
yeah, Royal Host. Yeah, exactly
Yep.
right. You know,
It's
we'd have these horrible days, and then we'd just go and like the Perkins of Japan, Royal Host, and you go and get
right.
your like tonkatsu, which is just absolutely terrible for you, and kind of the crappy soy sauce on it. It'd be like, all right, at least we get our food. I miss Royal Host. Is that still open? It's
Oh,
still
it's
around.
that's yeah, that's a thing still out here. In fact, the one that we used to go to in Morinomiya, right next to Osaka Castle, is still there for you to revisit anytime.
Oh my
Anytime you're in
lord.
Japan, revisit old trauma.
I worry about having to, move forward from a negative now with Jason Derulo token launching and Caitlyn Jenner token launching, and I really hope that's not people's first intro into crypto.
Yep. What was that song? Detachable Penis.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't want it to be the first intro, but it kind of is. The same thing that a lot of these things were out here, that are now dead. And I mean, the bottom line here is you just have to fight through the noise. You have to fight through the noise. You have to and you have to stick to your narrative, right? So if what you're doing is right, and this is actually what spoke to me right away about what Charles was doing back in the day. I don't know if you remember this or not. Probably do, Charles. Is I had my first talk with Jeremy out here, but then we spoke for something like an hour on Skype, and you kind of laid it out for me, and until then I was like, I don't know these guys, and they got that, the black and red website with Russian, English. It was, what is it, English, Russian, and Japanese. We had it in 3 languages, pretty much text only. And and then Charles just laid it out for me, and I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. I get it now.
Yeah, we had such a weird development team, of the original Cardano, the pre-Byron era, when we were still putting things together. Alex Chirpinoy and kind of the proto-Ergo guys during the Scorex days were there. We also had a Russian team that was true Russian. They were in St. Petersburg, and that was called Sarakel, led by Arseny Soroka, who looked like he was a male ballerina, and he was a crazy guy. And his co-founder Jan Mostovoy was a really interesting guy too. He had all these weird phobias, so he like never could travel, and he was always just hanging out in Latvia. And then we had Argentinian team at the same time. That was Alan Verbner down in Buenos Aires, because Nico Bentanides, who was the COO at the time, he had a really good set of contacts down in Argentina, and we'd just work together with them. And so you had like Russians, pseudo-Russians, and Argentinians with a Japanese team getting into the UK elite academic circles, and those were some crazy meetings in the beginning. And we're like, we're going to do it in Haskell, and like, what the hell is this? And oh man. And then we try to make it work in Japan, and we were looking for functional programmers there, and they're like, who the hell are you guys? what are we doing? Is it drugs? We're like, no, it's crypto. It's like, it's got to be drugs or something.
Might as well be drugs back then.
Exactly. It was such a crazy time. I don't know how we did it. I was working 18-hour days literally every day for the first 2 years.